today. But let's visit with Scott Cornell, transportation lead and crime theft specialist at Travelers. Another year, more freight fraud and theft. Scott, it seems like new year, same story.
Well, Happy New Year. What a year 2024 was, right?
What a year it was. In 2025, I mean, it's already off. It's already the South is frozen, man. Pigs are flying.
Yeah, I'm from Buffalo, New York, so I sit back and watch that stuff. I understand that they're not used to it down there, but I have snow trauma from my upbringing in Buffalo, so I'm glad I'm not in any snow. That's all I have to say.
Well, and I hope you don't have too much trauma from the Chiefs as well. I was pulling for Buffalo, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes this weekend. Pulling for them. We'll have you jump through a table. But how about the trends now? Buffalo trending. They're on the way up. How about what's trending in insurance for 2025?
Yeah, so Washington trending up too, right? I want to mention them. That's actually my team, so I'm happy to see them trending up. But I'm happy for the Bills too, having been from there. So good to see. It'd be nice to see some new teams, right?
No doubt.
in the big game. But when we talk about the trends, 2025, what we're hoping is that we kind of establish the new normal. We're not expecting the big, massive jumps in increases that we've seen over the past couple of years. We're hoping that it'll kind of level out. Also, we know that the industry is getting a better grip on how they're dealing with this. There's been a lot of improvement by the industry. There's been a lot of offerings of different solutions to prevent some of this type of theft. So we're hoping, trying to have a glass half full mentality, that we won't see the big jumps in numbers. We'll probably still see some increases, but we'll probably get to more of a new normal on that. We're also hoping to see more involvement from the federal government. Now, I know you mentioned earlier about the FBI. We have seen really good activity from the FBI across the industry. The industry has experienced good cooperation with the FBI and Homeland Security over the last year and a half. Of course, they can't address every theft. They're going to work on the ones they think that they can maybe have an impact on. But there are currently 3 bills. Once the new administration settles in and the new House and Senate are all settled in and everything like that, there are 3 bills that we're aware of that would call for the federal government getting more involved in this type of theft, and would establish, each one of those 3 bills establishes funding for a federal task force. So to be quite honest with you, from my perspective, I'd be happy to see any one of them pass, as long as whatever bill gets passed has that funding for that federal task force. We've also seen the FMCSA stand up a fraud team that's based in the DOT, but working with the FMCSA to try and stem the purchase of MC numbers for fraudulent intentions or nefarious intent. We see these large organized rings purchasing these MC numbers. They can then use them. They appear like a legitimate trucking company on paper because they've bought an MC number, and so they can use that to get loads, to go out, bid on shipments, get those shipments, disappear with them. They can also use them for what we've talked about in the past, which is that double brokering scam. So in other words, they use that MC number to get through the original freight broker's vetting process, and then they can turn around and rebroker that to a legitimate trucking company. And again, I always want to stress that legitimate trucking company has no idea that they're being involved in this. They think they're dealing with a legitimate freight broker, and then the bad guys will redirect that freight to somewhere where they can get their hands on it and begin to launder the freight. So by addressing this issue, we know that the FMCSA hopes to improve safety on the roads, ensure fair competition with the industry, and those efforts are crucial for protecting both the public and legitimate motor carriers that are trying to do business. The problem is when you get everybody thinking, hey, is this a legitimate trucking company or whatever? Sometimes, a legitimate trucking company gets caught up in the wash with that, right? That they're not doing anything wrong, but there's kind of a level of paranoia across the industry at some point. So we're keeping a close eye on that. We're hoping 2025 will be a year where we start to see some of those numbers level off and not climb the way they've climbed over the last 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, look, I reported on this show, and the more we talk about strategic theft, and I think the more this audience gets knowledgeable about it, they can hear all these things you're talking about. When I go through these stories, they're like, oh yeah, that's what Scott had mentioned. But how do they protect themselves? I mean, it does seem like, at least in case I've recently talked about, maybe a failure to validate. Maybe you could be doing that better. But how do we protect ourselves? Because you got to take some ownership here, especially like you're starting to be blamed for this, you're starting to get liable. Let's be smart. How do we protect ourselves?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. One, being up to date on what the evolving tactics are. Cargo thieves are constantly evolving their tactics, and most of the time, when you see an evolution in tactic, it's a little bit of a branch off from an already existing or already being used tactic, right? So when we talk about maybe that double brokering scam, or using an MC number that they've purchased to get a load, as an example, if it's a temp controlled load, they might tell you, hey, the reefer broke down, the load is spoiled. And they'll send you a receipt, and that receipt might be manipulated, but it's actually for a part, right? And they'll tell they had to do a repair on it, and so they had to purchase this part. And then they'll tell you that they had to destroy the load, and they'll send you a destruction receipt. And that destruction receipt has probably been manipulated. And in truth, they've only destroyed one pallet, and they've taken the receipt and manipulated that, and they're actually stealing the rest of the load, but they want you to believe that they've had to destroy it. Right. We've also seen some of the things that they do with GPS jamming. So they're using jammers to jam GPS when shippers and freight brokers and carriers are working together to put tracking in the loads. We've seen them also try and trick the light sensors on those tracking devices by putting them in paint cans and leaving them at the truck stop. So it appears as though the truck is actually still parked at the truck stop while they're taking it someplace else and offloading it. So being aware of those new tactics, and then freight brokers have to adopt a multidisciplined approach to verifying the carriers that they're working with. They have to know that the carrier is who they say they are. And the good news is there are several resources out there in the industry that are available to help you do that now. Additionally, TAPA is coming out with the freight broker security standards. TAPA is going to release those probably in February, maybe March of this year. And you can use those to work with their key shippers, right? And shippers, I think, are going to start to look for that type of a process being in place. Also, work closely with your key shippers on using GPS tracking, taking advantage of GPS tracking, new technology. It's really affordable. Make sure you know where that load is.
Did you have backups? Like you mentioned, like they're doctoring these documents and everything like that. Is it a good idea to keep backups on hand?
I think it's a good idea to keep backups on hand. I think it's also, make sure you're taking advantage of all the bells and whistles if you're using, let's say, something like tracking, right? So with tracking, you can use geofencing, which means you can basically create an area where the truck should travel. You can create a geofenced lane, or if the driver stops for a rest point, you can geofence it in there. That's just one of those things, but make sure you're taking advantage of all the technology that's available and all the bells and whistles that come with that technology. And then anything you get at this point, and I know it takes extra time, but anything you get, if you get a receipt, a destruction receipt or a repair receipt, unfortunately, you have to vet that. So if the destruction receipt is with, ABC Salvage or whatever, you need to call ABC Salvage and make sure that the piece of paper you have in your hand is exactly the piece of paper that they issued for that destruction. Unfortunately, we're in a situation where you have to verify everything.
Any final advice on protecting yourself as we embark on this 2025?
Well, we're seeing more phishing, more social engineering on emails. So encrypt your communication channels. Make sure that the dispatch and the logistics coordination are using secure communication, and that we're not clicking on things we shouldn't be clicking on. Again, making that frontline staff aware that, hey, there is potential for phishing, for social engineering, for hacking. We don't see a lot of hacking. It usually tends out to be phishing or social engineering emails that somebody clicks on. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I can't overemphasize enough. Train that frontline staff. You're not trying to create a group of experts, but you're trying to kind of create a spider sense that they have when they recognize that something's just not right, and then they can bring it to somebody and we can sort through it.
If you see something, say something. Scott, thank you so much for coming on today. I mean, hopefully this problem with some of this tech and some of these solutions everyone's coming out, the government, tech, insurance companies, hopefully the problem gets better this year. We all need it, man. Thank you so much for coming by today.
Always good to talk to you.
Take it easy.